as you know, is a traditional southern style of Kung Fu. The two pillar forms are Gung Ji Fuk Fu and Fu Hok Shang Ying. So Gung Ji Fuk Fu is the taming of the tiger, or the perseverance of taming the tiger. And Fu Hok Shang Ying is the double images of the tiger and the crane. So they represent the hard and the soft, typically. Hard and the soft represents the crane and the tiger. Hard and soft is the yin and yang in many, many styles, and Hung Gar's no different. Hopefully, maybe following this, if you know the form, you can pick up some of the way we execute. We're the Lam family system of Hung Gar. There's 7 lineage of Hung Gar. Everyone does it slightly different. There's no absolute way of doing it. You know, every lineage feels that they're doing it the correct way, but you know, it's subjective. But you know, we have an approach and a strategy of how we like to do our movements. If you like the way we do them, then you should follow them and take the advice. If you have your own interpretation of it, then that's fine. You know, we're all in this together, so whatever you get out of these videos, whatever you get out of the sequential thing, I hope you learn something, I hope you get something out of this. And, you know, moving forward, we're going to continue to stream these half-hour sessions, because 1-hour sessions seems to be too much and too long for people to follow all day long. So, you know, feel free to tune in live, like we're doing now, or come back to it later on when it's archived. And, you know, with that said, we're going to move on. We're going to start off with Gung Ji Fuk Fu, okay? Gung Ji Fuk Fu, we don't need to do warm-ups because we've already done that in the other classes. If you follow those, or you want to follow our warm-ups, you can kind of do those beforehand and then pick up on the strategy of form, okay? Ready? So I'm going to just do the form as usual, and you can follow its mirror image. So I think I'm going to do it facing the mirror. Okay, ready? A lot of these forms are on YouTube, so you can see these forms. But this is done specifically for our students so that they can follow along as if we're running a class. So if you're learning this form, follow along. If you're one of the kids that are at the academy, you can follow along, refresh your memory. I'm doing it slow enough for anyone who has learned to follow. Not specifically putting a lot of strength or power into the movement. This is for the sequential memory of the form. Okay, a few deep breaths. So that's the framework of the first section of the form. Gongji Fukui broken into upper and lower half. So I'm going to run through the second half with those of you so you can follow along. Okay. The first part was building strength. This part builds mobility and different techniques. Okay, deep breathing again. Inhale, exhale. Okay, so with this class, I'm going to focus more on what happens inside this form. Gongji Fukui is, this part of it is for dynamic strength, building strength in your bridges. Hunga talks about bridges. We have 12 bridges. We call 12 bridges of Hunga. They're really strategies in how we move in our forms, and also what are these techniques used for. So we have elbows, we have fists, we have wrist blocks, we have slicing movements right to left, we have big movements, we have small movements. So big movements, water. Okay, so your water has to come here. Horse stance to leaning, okay? That's an important movement, even Lam Sai Wing. Those were some of his most favorite techniques. But they're like essentially back fists. It's the water side of what we call Sui Long Pao Ju. Here, you have to aim, strike. 1, 2. The alignment of the position should be true. See, 1, 2. It has to be straight. Okay, so that's something that you have to focus on in your form. Okay, in the opening movement, where we have trapping hands, we have this. Make sure your trapping is not beyond the center line of your body from the side position, because that's what you're doing, you're trapping. So it's really intercepting. It's not a lot of strength this way, it's just positioning. You intercept, you turn. So between this and this, this and this is a maneuver. So that's why when we go into a position, slowly, one movement at a time, it gets you so that when you do this, when you do this, when you do this, that you have a position that when you intercept here or here, you have accuracy of movement. Okay, now, that's a trapping hand as a basic cutting hand. Cutting hand happens throughout the form with different combinations. When my hand goes to here, is when I'm here to here, this has to come down as a cut. As a cut. So the cutting hand is this movement. We have it right in the first form. But how do you use it and how do you apply it? Has to do with the space. The space within here. This is your middle gate. We have upper gate, middle gate, lower gate. So everything that we do within the realm of the middle gate is protecting that circle. That's your space. You have your center line and you have this space that goes from right to left. Regardless of how you get into that position, really depends on where you're moving from. So if you notice the Hung forms are so long, not because we just want to have a lot of long sequential movements. It's very precise as to, where you're going from one position to the next. Say, for instance, middle block and punch, middle block and punch. That's a pretty standard action in anybody's form. It's a middle block and a punch. Who doesn't know that? But if you're following this, we want to know that we move from where we are. Because if something comes here, you just do this. You don't need to reset and go into all these different positions. It's a direct motion, as well as this. So that's what you're building into your body as a system. No movement that you're learning is effective until it becomes a reflex action. When does it become a reflex action? When it has entered your subconscious behavior. Then it skips the level of thinking. That's a natural phenomenon. It happens. It's, there's no, magic to that. That's how we learn. That's how it becomes reflex. So when we move, what's important is the position and the timing and the focus of that power. So every movement has a direction. Every direction has a focus point. You have to figure that out and find that from your practice, timing. We have 5 coordinations that we have to work with. Hand, eye, body, waist, and stance. Seurng, we call it. The hand and eye coordination, the body form. This is body form. This is body form, right? That body form in combination becomes a timing that you build in the body form, the rotation of your torso, and the final position, which ends up as your stance. So that's why in traditional arts, our footwork is so important. A lot of people don't pay attention to footwork because they're only focusing on hands. They stand there and they do all these different crazy hand movements. It's not effective if the guy takes one step away from you. The effectiveness comes in when you can move and stay in contact or close to your opponent. Where does that happen? It happens from footwork. When we move to here and to here, that's sidestepping. When we move like this, that's changing direction. Your agility of footwork comes from how familiar your body is to that and how much of an action you can do as a reflex. When something comes and you go like this, that's the natural defensive mechanism. When something comes and you go like this, that's a trained reflex. It didn't look like any Kung Fu form, but it's a reflex that you're here. So you have, as your transition evolves, the form becomes really segments of the transition, which is, phases within the motion. So when we're here, there's one phase. Here's 2 phases. 3, 1, 2, 3. All of those are critical points of your motion. When you can complete the movement fully, then your body will start to recognize transition and timing. This is, just like when you take a video, it has so many frames per second. Those frames per second are interim positions within a phase. But the thing is, when you make these transitions, when you apply it, do you use this part of it, this part of it, this part of it, or this part of it? So all of this is all part of it, right? When you throw a punch, is it this that's important, or this that's important, or this that's important? So as you build body understandings, which I call body intelligence, then every part of that movement becomes important. You know, your interception of a technique and a follow-up with the movement is really deflecting and striking. You know, a combination of block and strike. So when we're here, what's the position? My setup is already here. As soon as I do this, my hand is ready to punch. When I go like this, that's an interim position. If I go like this, that's an interim position. But where does your body know or find that position if it's never been there before, right? So when I go like this and I pull, that's how your action should be when you're using the movement, because after you block or after you block, and you grab or you know, connect like this with the wrist and squeeze and punch, this has to know to allow this to come out. So when we're here, so we have positions. All of these are positions that you have to understand as part of the strategy of your technique. If you only know this and only know this, that's as far as it goes. It's not very effective. Not very effective because you're taught that this is your block and this is your punch. What about the transition? In all the higher level traditional arts, the transition is the most important. The transition is most important because there has to be structural integrity throughout your movement. It doesn't just go through an empty space and then becomes a final position. There's so many nuances to get to position. When I'm here, I shift, I sink, I turn. All of this stuff has to happen as a function of your skill level. And you know, whether you're watching as a novice, a more advanced, instructor, a teacher, all of this stuff would be, you know, valuable information. If you're a teacher, you already know it. If you didn't know it, you should learn these ideas. If you're a novice, realize that as you progress, this is what part of your end goal is. So, you know, it's an amazing journey when you pass through these stages, reaching intermediate to advanced to mastery. It's, you know, it's eye-opening and enlightening when you get through to the more advanced phases, because it's not purely a physical exercise. Okay, now, going back to, we just did that. Now, here, when you strike, boom, the hand and the legs. Now this is a horse stance. This is a transition between the stance. This is a drop stance to a lean stance, right? This drop. So why do you have to go through that? You have to go through that because the last thing I mentioned was the phases in transition. If you don't have those phases timed, you have to work on it. And how do you work on it? Specificity training. You have to do it over and over again till your body recognize your end goal. The end goal is to get the power to the end of the fist, extend the body, straighten the back leg, get the power to the front leg. The momentum of this creates the power in the form. So when you strike, it has to have power at the end. So that's what we're striving for in the form. You can't practice a form 100% with every little thing happening perfectly, so that's why we have to practice it frequently. We build, through fundamentals, this idea of timing, but most of us only focus on the sequential memory. The sequential memory is the first phase. The second phase is go back and relearn that form and find out what you missed. Is the legs working? Are the arms working? Are the positions correct? And then you fix all of those things. You go to the next phase. Is the power right? Is the transition right? Is the gathering, releasing of the energy in the movement correct? Those are stages of development. It's not just random, although people just think, well, that's going to happen. It doesn't happen unless you follow and abide by the guidance and the principles of what You're taught as a theory. So that's the technical side of learning. The technical side of learning, unfortunately, is very shallow in most of the world of martial arts because, part of it is not learning from a teacher that has enough knowledge, and some of it is not having the opportunity to learn from someone that has gone through this process. So, the old teachers that people would like to learn from is the reason for that, because the older teachers from the past generation have gone through this process, understand what you should be doing, but and then again, sometimes it's not able to be expressed, just like that movie, Lost in Translation. Lost in Translation, because everyone that translates or interprets whatever they're teaching you, could be based on only their perspective. So, there is stages and evolution as we learn, and that's just to give you some insight as, what is beginner, intermediate, advanced, and beyond. It's very hard to categorize it based on number of years or stripes or belts. It's very hard to determine that. So going from there, we have the forms that go like this. Now, say the sweep. Okay, we have this sweep. Okay, so this hand should go like this. This is a dragon claw. This goes behind like this. When you stomp and push, this hook should not go beyond this foot. So when you hook, it's this, and it should be like that. Now this hand is going to go like this. This hand is going to go like this. So what's important in that movement is that this and this have to go together. Now that's in Hunga. You go, 1, 2, 3. But if you're grabbing someone and you have your leg behind the person, that's the action that you have to use in order to take the person down. You can't do this and then this. It doesn't work. We have this idea of upper body and lower body. The coordination between the upper and body has to be working together. So when you practice this movement, your goal is to build the body form, the timing, the strength, the balance, and all that happens in the lower part, because the body, the upper part, will have to do its share of that technique. So all of it happens through how your body is moving. That's coordination. It's a motor skill. You have to learn to twist your body. It's not just twisting. We do this anyways as a warm-up, but it's twisting and integrating and counterbalancing your movement. This counterbalancing is just like they have in physics. It's an equal opposite reaction. Newton's second law, you actually have to combine your body's movements to create this illusion of balance, but yet it is actually a balance in forces. So the thing is, when the movements are balanced, it looks right, it has aesthetics, it looks strong, it looks effective. So when you're here, you can see if I punch from here, I don't turn into my stance and do this. I have to integrate this movement, drop, and punch. So this alignment has to be here. When I turn, I have to bring my hand like this. First is this, and then it's this. It's not this. My hand has to interchange. Okay, now when I stomp, and this hand comes back, it has to come from here. My hand from here has to come from here. Okay, so that's moving from one point to another without resetting. So that's what the continuity of movement, the fluidity of our action comes from that integration of body movement. That's how you learn to move from one point to another. That's how we're here, 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 here. Everything is cycling through, but it's very precise and set up as a course of action from what we've developed in our forms. So while it looks very physical on one hand, it's actually the intrinsic motion of integration of body from what we've built up here. It's an amazing process, but the brain can house lots and lots of information, but it has to be deciphered over time and experienced through understanding. So if we can't house that information without interpreting it and bring it down into the body, it still becomes, somewhat misunderstood. So the body learning, or in Tai Chi we call it Gung or Gung, it's really body intelligence. When our body becomes intelligent, then we're able to understand what we're actually thinking about. So that's something that a lot of people don't realize, that you actually can't see beyond your level of understanding, because what you don't realize what the body can do, you'll be second-guessing it all the time. So as you progress and you reach mastery level, that understanding is a threshold that unless you can get to that point of understanding, it's still physical and superficial. So that's, my take on how I interpret the movements, but depth of knowledge is something that really has no shortcuts. But the better information that you have and the more understanding that you at least capture, then, your ability to take that information and allow your body to decipher it while you're going through this transformation is part of the process. So from the water form, we step up high block. There's a transition to go from here to here. But when we step, don't just do that. You have this have to go together. That's important because you learn how to punch like this. You don't go like this. So that's why in the fundamentals, we have to both sides. Because when I go like this, that's actually what would happen. And that happens spontaneously, because when I go like this or I go like this, your hand's going to automatically be in that position. How does it know? It knows because you've gone through it. You won't know it if it's just something that you saw and said, well, I know that. You know it when your body has realized it. Okay, so that's the palm strike. It happens in fourth form. Actually, it happens in everything that we do. So if you're studying with us, make sure you kind of look at what I just did and realize, and then go through your forms and say, where does that show up? Where does that show up? It's all the same, actually. You reach a certain level, even at the intermediate, you realize, oh, that's that movement, that's that movement. So it's all actually translated up here. So once that's translated, your body will start to move much, much better, okay? So when we're in that position, say on this side, when we step up, this is a press. Cutting hand, press. Middle block, trap. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you see, those are all positions. Forms teach you position, then you have transition. I went through some of the actions, but let's take a look at when we're here and we take a step. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2. That's the same thing practically, and uppercut. Okay, so that's a posture in the form defined specifically by a name, but actually your body kind of knows this. It knows this. It knows this. This is uppercut. We learned it in the first form. There's uppercut. So when I'm here and I go like this, 5 stances, we go like this instead of this. So the combination of positions and movements start to vary. And then ultimately, all of these positions and imagery is captured in the body. And then when you draw off of it, it happens spontaneously, happens as a reflex, and you didn't even know it happened by the time you're done with it. So that's really how we learn. It's called no-mindedness, where the mind doesn't become part of that action. But the thing is, that's what reflex is. If you think about it, it's too late. It's too slow. So how do you develop that? Slow your forms down, look at the detail, pay more attention to your transition, focus on your leg work. All of those things are very important. So as we move forward, everything that you thought you knew, you should reevaluate and say, okay, I need to work on these things because I didn't really realize that. So that's, that's learning. If you knew it, you wouldn't be watching this to begin with. But if you already knew it, watching this will reinforce what you already know. So, there's a support, there's a give and take on both sides. I'm just giving you my explanation and, my experience teaching over time. And I think that's, what everybody does when they learn from someone that has information and knowledge that is beyond their level or to support their information. So on that note, I think we're pretty close to signing off. I'll be doing something tomorrow in the morning. All our streaming is done live in the morning, archived in the evening. You can watch it 24/7. You have a bit of time on your hands because at least here, we're kind of in lockdown or shutdown, so we're all home at night. You can follow those and practice, spend some time. We need the exercise. And I'll see you tomorrow if you sign in, otherwise Thursday.